Everyone, we have Jodi Whiteman here with us. She is the Director of Partnerships and Growth at LENA, where she supports early childhood programs. She has over 20 years of experience in the early childhood field, working within early care and education, early intervention, infant and early childhood mental health, and child welfare systems. She offers support both nationally and internationally through professional articles, guides, and curriculums on a variety of early childhood topics. She is an active board member for the North Carolina Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Association and Infant Massage USA. She has contributed to the 0 to 3 by providing industry knowledge and writing curriculum for multiple programs. And her presentation will review early talk research regarding conversational turns to improve socio-emotional development, executive functioning, reading skills, and brain development, and how this can be put into practice to promote responsive caregiving. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Jodi, and I will be here if you need anything.
Thanks so much. I realize it just turned to 2 o'clock, so people might just be joining us now. Appreciate. Yeah, I can't see how many people are here with us. Oh, I see. Actually, I do. 1920. Welcome, everyone. Super duper excited to be here today to be a part of this conference. As mentioned, I am a board member of Infant Massage USA and a certified educator of infant massage, and have built the work into my practice when I was doing direct service practice in early intervention, but also as I work at a national level with advocacy, policy, and professional development. So I'm super duper excited to be here. We'll be utilizing the chat function this afternoon or morning, I guess, depending on where you're calling from. And so feel free to type in questions, comments, even thoughts, wonderings as we go throughout the next hour together. So my name is Jodi, as mentioned, and we're going to be talking about every interaction counts and focusing on the science behind how conversations really help build brains. I work for an organization called LENA, and LENA stands for Language Environment Analysis. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the work at LENA and how LENA, and basically what LENA is a talk pedometer, a Fitbit for words, really helps get the data to really understand the impact that these conversational turns are having on brain development and really overall development. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I know many of you come with a lot of knowledge about child development, about family support systems. So I don't really feel like I need to convince many people about why early talk is important, but just to help kind of start and ground us, I wanted to start with this slide as it refers to thinking about talking with. So when we think about talk, I'm really going to focus this afternoon here in North Carolina, where I live, about talking with instead of talking to. And so we refer to that as interactive talk. And we know that there's a ton of research that is connected with interactive talk. And this interactive talk is that back and forth, which we'll spend a lot of time talking about. And this we refer to as conversational turns. And conversational turns are linked to all these bullets that you see on the slide: brain structure, function, reading skills, IQ skills, social emotional development, language, executive functioning, and reasoning. And so many of you may have also seen an image that it may be similar to this image on the slide, but I also wanted to ground us in looking at the baby's brain. And we know that the baby's brain grows the most in the first few years of life. And in fact, a baby's brain builds millions of neural connections per second. And so that's what this image is. It's the proliferation of neural synapses over the first 2 years of a baby's life. And you can see in that 2-year marker just the extraordinary amount of brain growth that happens. We know when these synapses happen and the baby's brain is growing. We know that the goal is to build this really strong brain architecture so that we can have all these connections working together. We also know that when these connections are not happening, they go through a process that's called synaptic pruning. And so some of you may have heard of this process referred to as use it or lose it. So we really want, as those of us that are promoting as parents, as caregivers, positive development, we really want to think about how we can build this strong brain architecture within the activities and the responsivity of our interactions in the first 3 years of life. Always, but in particular, the first 3 years of life. You may or may not have known that also a baby's brain processes speech at 1/5 the speed of an adult's brain. So just out of curiosity, when you hear this in the chat, what do you think is important about this piece of information when you hear a baby's brain processes speech at 1/5 the speed of an adult's? Go ahead and just chat some of your thoughts in. Yep, we need to slow down your rate of speech. Yep, songs, repeating messages. Yeah, focusing on the pitch, that parentese voice, getting down on the contact, the eye contact. Yeah, keep them coming. This is great. So it's really important that we become, if we're really intentional and aware of the fact that we do need to slow down, because we are trying our best to produce the most positive interaction for young children. So again, this idea of conversational turns, you may have heard it as serve and return, interactive talk. Today we're going to talk about this kind of serve and return with that term conversational turns. And I liken it to a game of ping pong. So if you think about it, an adult or a child or a baby can serve up the ping pong, and then an adult or child can return that. And that back and forth is counted as a conversational turn. And we're going to take a look at what this looks like in real life.
Okay. They need to work on that, right? Yes, okay. Did you understand it though? No. No. Okay. All right. Huh? Oh, no. Not this one. This is the grand finale of this. Okay, the last? Yeah, that's the last one. That's what I was wondering. I don't know what they're gonna do next season because they did some stuff this time. Exactly what I was thinking. Oh yeah. Right. Don't bring that again. You know what I'm saying? Don't do the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah. Like go somewhere else with that, but don't break here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what I said. And then was like, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, what in the world? Don't do it here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Really? I thought the same thing. We think a lot alike, huh? Oh, that's crazy. Right.
So one of my most favorite videos, and I appreciate you all chatting in too. So what did you see in that video? What were some of your observations between that that little boy and his father? Turn taking, absolutely. Yeah, respect from the father, giving time for a response, great interaction, affirmation. 100% Sarah, that baby felt heard, right? I mean, that dad was in tune, that baby felt heard, that baby felt like he was special. He was a special person. He was part of that relationship. Definitely matching the baby. There was a strong connection. Yes, thank you so much. So when we think about that conversational turn, that back and forth, and you could see, and all of those things you all said in terms of when the brain processes speech at 1/5 the adult, that father really waited for that response. And that's really what we're talking about in terms of serve and return. So again, just in case you need another visual to kind of think about what this conversational turn looks like, and we say key child and adult, we're talking about a child birth to any age can serve it up, the adult responds, the child returns. And so the reason why I wanted to make sure we paused on this slide to take a look at this is because LENA is a device that counts conversational turns. And we're going to talk a little bit about how this device has been used in research all over the globe in terms of the power of this back and forth conversation as it relates to overall development. So again, maybe I don't have to convince you all confirming the power of conversational turns, because now we have so much research that's been put out about the power of serve and return and the importance of brain development. But it's always really good when you get additional research that can confirm the importance of this serve and return. So on this slide, I was just going to highlight just a handful of studies that really confirm the power of conversational turns. So the first two I want to talk to you all about is there are studies that were done by Rachel Romeo and researchers at Harvard and MIT, and they published two papers. The first paper identifies the relationship between conversational turns and the activation of the Broca's area of the brain, which is the language processing center. I'm going to dive a little deeper into this one in a bit. The second finding indicates how conversational turns strengthen the white matter of the brain, which is often referred to as the informational highways in the brain. And the really cool thing about this is it's not just showing us now that power of conversational turns focuses on the language processing, but connecting and improving the white matter, the informational highway, shows us that conversational turns help the brain work together, not just that language processing area. So really impacting all areas of development. The next research that I wanted to highlight was in the fall of 2018, a 10-year longitudinal study was published by Dr. Jill Gilkerson, who's the lead researcher at LENA, with other researchers. And what she worked with the other researchers on was exploring how conversational turns in the earliest years of a child's life relate to long-term child outcomes. And the study found a strong correlation between the amount of conversational turns a child experienced at 18 to 24 months of age and a child's verbal abilities, language skills, and IQ scores in middle school. So we're seeing that longitudinal effect of the power of conversational turns at that 18 to 24 months of age. Another study looked at brain structure and brain function and reading skills, and Dr. Emily Mertz and a team of researchers from Teachers College at Columbia University studied the relationship between a family's socioeconomic background, child's brain structure, and a child's reading skills. And what this study found was that children who experienced more conversational turns had a greater surface area in the Perry-Sullivan cortex. And this is important because the Perry-Sullivan cortex in the brain is associated with reading and literacy skills. So while adult words and conversational turns both affected brain growth, the effect size was actually 15% higher for conversational turns, really confirming that quality is much more important than the quantity when you're talking to children. Moving to the bottom of the screen, another paper from Rachel Romeo and team was published in 2021, and they used functional magnetic resonance imaging, a functional MRI, to pair this with the LENA technology. And this time, they mapped out the important chain of connections linking family-based interventions. So that could be family-based, like infant massage classes, home visiting, those family-based interventions, adult-child conversational turns, brain growth, executive functioning, and reasoning assessments. And then the last study that I'm very excited about was published in 2021, and it came from researchers working in Santiago, Chile, including Dr. Esteban Gomez Muzio and Dr. Catherine Strazer. And what's really important about this study is they found a causal link between interactions at 18 months of age and social emotional skills at 30 months of age. And so essentially the number of conversational turns a child experienced at 18 months of age predicted their emotional regulation, attachment, emotional communication 1 year later. And so that's really, really great and super important. And Dr. Muzio and colleagues are actually, they followed these children and they're releasing their updated research that is showing that this is continuing as that child is aging, which is very exciting. So let's go back to this first one and just dive a little deeper because I'm a visual person, so I like to see what this looks like in real life. So if you remember that Rachel Romeo, that first paper that was published looking at the connection between power of conversational turns and the Broca's area of the brain. And this is an MRI, functional MRI that was completed in a study. This in particular looks at two 4-year-old little girls. The top one experienced about 1,200 turns per day. And the bottom one was about 580 turns per day. And you can see where that green circle is and where the blood flow increases that's the Broca area of the brain. So you can see with the increase in conversational turns, you can see the brain activity actually increasing in this image, which I just think is super fascinating. Okay, before I go on to the next slide, I want to ask you all a question, and you can just chat in your response. I want you to think about a child that you interact with that is between the ages of 3 months of age and maybe 15 months of age. Or an observation that you maybe have had with an adult that's interacted with a very young child between 3 months and 15 months of age. I want you to think about how many conversational turns do you think that adult and baby have within an hour? Just throw out a number of how many conversational turns that serve and return back and forth between a 3-month-old to a 15-month-old within 1 hour. $50, $150. Well, I think that maybe we're not getting a lot of responses because it's really hard to know, right? It's really, really hard to know unless you have a mechanism for measuring it. And that's really where the LENA device comes in because we can measure those back and forth responses. And so I wanted to share this study with you that adults actually have a very hard time knowing how much they're talking with children without an objective measure. So according to a LENA study that was conducted, those that overestimate the most tend to talk the least. And most adults think they actually talk more than they do. And so this chart comes from a LENA research. And what our technology did was it counted the words spoken by a large group of adults and then asked the adults how much they actually thought they talked. And so the red circles here on the graph are those that overestimated. And that lowest group is the families that actually talk the least. So again, those of us that talk the least tend to overestimate the most. So it's really important for us at LENA to see how we can use the data that we collect from the device. The device is language agnostic. You can speak any language to it. It does not record. It just ticks the phonemes and syllables within a 6 to 10 foot radius to pull this back and forth serve and return. And then we use these this data within a variety of different ways through research, through programs, etc. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So oftentimes we are asked, well, you know, the serve and return, what is the optimal talk? What's the optimal talk for these longitudinal outcomes? And so the optimal benchmark that we have at LENA based on our longitudinal data is 40 conversational turns per hour. So how we got to this is the study that I had mentioned that from Dr. Gilkerson. In 2006, LENA recruited about 329 children and families to participate in a study from a variety of different SES backgrounds, and these children range from ages 2 to 48 months. LENA recordings were conducted as well as developmental assessments. We followed these children and we were able to find 146 of them when they were in middle school between the ages of 9 and 13 years old. And when we located them, we had outside evaluators do some developmental assessments. And so our question was, do LENA measures, so do those conversational turns in early years predict development? And we found that yes. And what we found was in particularly between those ages of 18 to 24 months was when we saw the most impact, statistical significant increase in those middle school scores of IQ, cognitive, and language and reasoning scores. So we have this benchmark of that 40 conversational turns. So of course you always strive to get more, but you really want to strive as a caregiver when you're interacting with children, again, all ages, for that 40 conversational turns, that back and forth. So I want to pause before I move on, and I want to ask you all to just share. When you heard, I went through that research pretty quickly. When you heard that research, what finding was most important to you? And maybe which of the findings or part of that first part of this presentation impacts your day-to-day work? And yes, Rebecca, it does vary depending on the caregiver. So did anything stand out that was surprising? Thanks, Anne-Marie. At LENA, as we have these chats coming in, at LENA, we always say that words are good, but turns are better. And so I just always kind of try and emphasize in that interactive piece of talking with instead of talking to. Great, Lori, thank you. Yeah, it's nice to know that you have a benchmark to really strive to meet and exceed, right? It doesn't have, you can increase this over time. So just increasing by 2 turns per hour each time actually statistically increases your ability to get to that 40 conversational turns. Thanks, Haiti. Awesome, it's coming in now. Yeah, that slowing down is so important, Cynthia. Yeah, so you see it all the time, Linda, right? When in your work. And we know the impact now that it has on brain development. Okay, you can keep your thoughts coming in. We're going to move on. And so just in case you're wondering about this LENA thing, if you have never seen it, it's a little device that sits in a vest. It looks really heavy on this little girl, but it's not heavy at all. And there's two buttons. There's a record, there's an on record. And then at the end of the day, the vest is worn all day. At the end of the day, there's a little portal where you upload it to a cloud, and then it produces a report, like the report that you see on the screen. And so we're going to talk a little bit about our LENA START program, because this is our family-facing program. So LENA START is used by hospitals, by libraries. It can be used anywhere where families gather together. So a perfect partner for LENA START would also be infant massage classes. And so the families would take the device home and they would have their LENA day, and they sometimes can upload the device by themselves, or they can have a drop place for somebody else to upload the device. When they come back together in a class, they will then have their report, and together they'll talk about what they see. And you can see on this report, it looks at hourly conversational turns across the course of the day. It looks at hourly words, adult words across the course of the day, and it looks at the background electronic media sound. And so using all of this data really helps inform goals to increase these conversational turns at different parts of the day. There's a training for whoever's leading the conversations around these reports. It's very relationship, very reflective, because the idea is that those individuals that are using this report and using the data to improve practice are really thinking about it in terms of how that impacts their relationship. So this gives you a little bit more about the LENA START. So I'm going to play this real quick, and then we'll dive into using it.
Siempre estoy pensando en su futuro.
My future for her, I want her to be able to do anything that she put her mind to.
I imagine her going to school, high school, college. I dream of her as a doctor.
Yo creo que el propósito de nosotros es que ellas aprendan y lleguen a ser alguien en la vida.
Am I doing the right things? Am I being a good mom?
Va a haber un programa sobre una maquinita que le iban a poner a los niños, una grabadora con un chaleco, iban a contar las palabras y a ver cuánto le hablábamos a los niños.
You know, as we started doing the program, everything kind of changed, and I could tell the difference. She was just seemed like she was just understanding.
For me, I just really felt silly talking to a baby. Of course, now I realize that it is very important to talk to them.
Siento que me ayuda más el reporte porque yo veo cuántas palabras fue que le dije en todo el día, cuántas conversaciones tuvimos, cuántos turnos, refleja todo lo que pasó en el día. En cambio, si una persona me está diciendo, muy bien, hazlo, sigue haciéndolo, yo no voy a ver en qué me estoy equivocando o qué estoy haciendo mal.
We talk more with each other. She's been noticing like, oh, my dad is actually spending time with me.
Él dice que está aprendiendo a leer con ella. Él en la tarde y a la hora de dormir es el que se pone a leer con ella.
Actually, for me as a man, I learned a lot about my child. You will never know the benefits your child can receive if you don't try.
It's a big opportunity that the program LENA is giving us.
Sí, el programa es algo que puedo estar practicando diario, que puedo estar compartiendo con mi hijo totalmente.
So LENA or no LENA, being the device or no device, the most important thing here is just to think about the intentionality of how to build this piece into your already existing work with families. So how to think about, I mean, the device is great, right? The report is great, but you don't necessarily need that. It's really what you need is the self-awareness of am I talking with? It's just an extra piece that helps with the objective data piece, but you can build these types of conversations with families into your work, whether it's your one-on-one work with families, whether it's your work, in groups with families, and just talking about how you can ask that question. So how many conversational turns do you think you have per hour with your child? And, most of the time you'll get silence, or you'll get a couple people say, 20, 500, but it's really then the next time you meet with that family, you can say, okay, so, conversational turns are so important because it's connected to all of these areas of development. Think about being really intentional about some things you can do, and you can try to increase that serve and return. And then the next time you connect with that family, you can kind of revisit that and reflect on, do you feel like you increased your ability to have more serve and return with your baby or young child? And so it's just super impactful to really bring in that self-awareness, that intentionality piece of this. Okie dokie. So I wanted to share this resource with you. This is the resource that LENA put out, and it's free. We're going to actually use it in the next activity that we do. But these are 14 talking tips. And if you look at them, you'll see they're very simplistic activities, tips that you can do, that you can build into your everyday routines. With your child, with a child, with children in general, to really help increase that interactive talk. We have it available currently in English, Spanish, French, Arabic, Portuguese, Korean, and Mandarin, and we're expanding our translation of these talking tips to expand in other languages as well. Hopefully within the next year, we'll have some more in other languages. They're free, accessible, downloadable on our LENA website. I'm gonna give you a QR code here in a minute. So you can scan, if you have a smartphone with you, you can scan this QR code. I'm gonna hold for a minute so you have the ability to do that. It might ask you for your email address so that you can download that, because we're going to use these 14 talking tips. And I realize when I turn the slide off of this, you're not going to have the talking tips. So scan the code, pull up those talking tips. The first one's talking about what you're doing and thinking. The second one's commenting on what they're doing or looking at. The third one is naming things that's of interest. The fourth one is getting down to their level, face to face. The fifth one is looking at touch, hug, and hold. You can see how that is so much connected to infant massage. Tune in and respond to what they're looking at. Waiting, that wait time. Imitating, adding words. Making faces and gestures, taking turns, repeating. We talked about that when you guys were telling me what you saw on the video. Following the lead, encouraging them to be positive, and then of course being silly, because it's supposed to be fun, right? We're supposed to have really some fun, positive interactions. So thanks, Brianna, for putting the link as well in the chat. So you have 2 ways to get to them now. So what I would like to do is I would like to show a video, and in the video, as you're watching the video, I would like for you to look at these talking tips and just kind of jot down what you see in the video, and then we'll come back together and share. Alrighty. Here we go. Can you all hear the sound?
No, it does seem like we lost sound on this one.
No. All right.
It is buffering.
It worked when I did it with, let's try this again. Go back. Oh, bummer.
The sound.
All right.
Able to add the closed captioning on it. Would that help with the video?
Well, as we're waiting, I'm going to try something else because technology, sometimes doesn't work all the time. Go ahead and chat a little bit how you are using those talking tips in your work, maybe some examples. Let me stop sharing here. All right. So Brianna, can you just see me right now?
Yes.
Okay. Slideshow from the current slide. I know I want you guys to see this video because it's so sweet.
Yeah, I'm curious.
I'll be so sad if it doesn't work.
Earlier perfectly.
I can't hear you, Brianna. I think you're muted.
Oh.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Let's see if this works. I don't know why it's not working, but so plan B, take a look, even though you can't hear, you can still see, and think about those talking tips just in terms of your observation of what's going on in this back and forth exchange. Yeah, you can see a lot of facial expressions, imitation, enjoyment, turn taking. Ooh, I love that, Paul. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you're doing that education, because that's so important. Giggling, eye contact. We can put the link to the tips one more time because we're going to come back to that after we watch this video a little bit. Okay. Anything else pop out at you in terms of what you're seeing within this relationship? Love. Happiness. Do you think this engagement would be this strong if maybe that child wasn't sitting in proximity as close to this mom as he is? Yeah, I love that comment, Catherine. Yeah, you're right. No, I think it's so important when we think about that serve and return at this young age, especially that, first year of life, that proximity for so many reasons, right? Like because of, how far babies can see and their eyes, their eyesight and that engagement, that proximity. That's why the beauty of, infant massage is so great because you're touching, you're holding, you're talking to the child and you're getting very close in that relationship in your proximity. I know I didn't use it without the audio, but it actually is pretty impactful. So I'm glad we were able to still watch it. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Yeah, you can see the imitation of when, whoo, how the baby's reflexes are also imitating her vocal mouth expressions. That's a beautiful relationship there. Okay, so we're going to go back to this 14 talking tips here. And I want to hear from you all because these, as I mentioned, these are everyday tips that you can use. How do you use these in your work with families? What are some things that you do to use these tips? Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, when the baby looks at you, you make a sound and you give it back. And then that's that perfect back and forth, and then you'll get something hopefully back from that baby most likely. That's that beautiful serve and return. What are other examples? Oh, I love that, Catherine, using the tips with the doll and asking parents to do the same. Eye contact, voice enhancements, and baby response. Yeah. A funny story when I was practicing when I was going through my infant massage classes to become certified, I had my baby doll and I would practice all the time. And I remember my husband, we were newly married. He was looking at me like, what are you doing talking to a baby doll? But that's what it's all about, right? It's all practicing to show or help families understand how to do that back and forth, that serve and return. Oh yeah, tone, rate, holding the baby, making eye contact. Oh, with newborn classes, talking about how infants cry to communicate. Yeah, and the responsivity and the importance of being responsive. Oh, I love that, Lori, putting words, giving words to baby's cues, talking for the baby, following that baby's lead. Learning trust, right? That's the first part of this relationship. It's that having that intentional quality relationship really helps build that trust. Oh, so yes, looking at where they're looking or pointing and commenting on that. You guys are hitting on all of these. So I see number 8, imitating, following their lead. Number 12, talking about what you're doing, putting a voice. Yeah, you're hitting on all of these. What are some things you see in your work that are challenging around incorporating something like these 14 talking tips? Oh yeah, I bet. I've never held teen classes, but I bet that it would be challenging and making sure the fun and silly is there. Distracted parents on their phones. Yeah, that's probably my biggest challenge as well. Yeah, or like having them be embarrassed, right? I mean, sometimes being silly, I guess, could be embarrassing, but how do we, create that trusting relationship? Pictures posting, yeah. Does anybody have like an ask to kind of put their phones aside if they're doing any kind of parenting classes? Yeah, Lauren, when parents don't repeat with their baby, it's such a missed opportunity. But I love that all the modeling that you all are talking about. We talk about tummy time. Oh yeah, this would be great during tummy time. Phones go on the airport and keep. I love that. Yeah, airplane mode for class. That's great. So specifically, when we think about infant massage, some of the things that I just thought of, but I would love for you all to add to this list of bullets is When we ask for permission, we're using those talking tips. When we talk about what you're doing, let's see that leg of yours. I love those beautiful fingers, right? Just some examples. And we already talked about this. You guys gave good examples of giving space for the baby to respond with coos and smiles and vocalizations. And then even though the baby can't respond verbally to the questions, it's really important that we continue to ask these questions. Did that make you happy? And give a wait time, right? That 1/5 of processing adult speech, we got to make sure that we give that wait time in this relational experience so that that baby can say, whoo, and right, that is a response. If that baby showed you smiles, giggles, coos after you asked if that made them happy, you're teaching vocabulary, you're teaching language. What else if you're thinking about infant massage in terms of these talking tips? What are some other concrete examples that you would use? And I'll go back, I'll put the talking tips back on the slide in case you need to see them. Specific to infant massage. Anything anyone else would want to add? Understanding what baby's cues look like. That's really important, right? Because if you aren't helping educate on what is a cue, then how do you know what that is and really how to respond, right? Respond in a really meaningful, intentional, quality type of manner. I think for me also, it gives me confidence, right? When I think about these 14 talking tips that I'm doing these things already. It's not like extra, right? Like they're things that I'm already doing and I can do more of. And if I do more of these things, that's really going to help my baby's brain develop. And it's, it's a confidence builder that, you may feel like, oh gosh, this is really hard because parenting is really, really hard, but that you already are doing so many great things. And these, if you can just continue to build on these tips and these things, then it's even going to help you, your relationship, whoever's interacting, right? It's not just the mother and the father, it's whoever's interacting with that child. Oh, I love that. Yes, encouraging them when they appear to enjoy a stroke. Oh, you like that. I see you smiling. That's great. Acknowledging parents' potential unease with learning new parenting skills. Yeah, because oftentimes, right, this is something different. A lot of the parents that we're working with, families, caregivers that we're working with, they've never experienced these things themselves. So it's very, very new and can seem very, very hard, difficult, challenging. But all these little things really help impact all of those neural synapses, those millions of neural synapses that are happening every second. Any other thoughts around this? Okie dokie. I did want to leave enough time for questions. Probably would have went a little longer if that video would have showed the whole time, but I think that we all together, which I appreciate y'all, did very well really looking at that and observing what that interaction looked like without any sound. So I appreciate that, that piece of plan B of this presentation. So Brianna, is there a structure that you want to use here?
I actually just wanted to hop on because
while you know what, I can't hear you for some reason. I know others can't hear you. I mean, they probably can hear you. I think there's some sound thing going on my end. So go ahead and just say what you're going to say and I'll follow your lead.
Into the chat box if you would like.
Okay. Yeah, it's on my end, but I'm glad you all can hear me. I just can't hear anybody else. We're having some weird storms here today. So I don't know if that's affecting the sound. Were you going to do questions via audio? Or can we do the questions via the chat and we can go from there? If you want to try the sound, that's. I don't think that video is. I don't know if you have that video because I just put it in last minute. So if anyone has some questions or reflections before we go to full reflections, feel free to type those in the chat while we're going back and forth here. I didn't think so, yeah. I think we did pretty good at looking at that interaction though. And as you're thinking about questions, I would like for you, if you don't have any, what I'd like for you to do is think of a reflection of something that you heard or saw during this presentation, during or on the chat that you'll take with you in your practice. And just go ahead and share that via the chat if you're comfortable. Thanks, Paula. Thanks for joining. So one reflection of something that you'll take with you as you think about building in your practice. Thanks, Janelle. So for me, I think one of the things that jumped out was one of the chats that said, you know, helping families or caregivers understand behavioral cues. I think in general, I can do a better job at focusing on helping understand what that looks like and the importance of why and how to respond in a way. So I appreciate that. Whoever chatted that in, I'm gonna take that with me and do focus a little stronger on that. Great, the 40 conversational turns. Thank you, Catherine. Talking tips. Yeah, make sure if you have families that speak other languages than English, you can go and download them. You can print them out. You can print as many copies as you want out as well. I'm going to put my email here too if anybody has additional questions or anything after. Keep those reflections coming in. Encouraging parents to respond to their baby's communication, recognize the importance of the back and forth. That's beautiful. Thanks, Gail. Yep, I did pull it on YouTube. So it is the talking baby at 3 months old. You could just put that right into YouTube. And if those of you, if there's people that are really, really interested in the research, if you go to LENA's website, there is a page that actually is all of the research. And it looks at research in terms of the different communities that we're working with. So from those of you that are working in early intervention, it talks about research and work in early intervention, working with deaf and hard of hearing population, early care and education settings, family child care settings. So you can dive into that a little bit more on the website. Well, I'm going to hang out here. I know we're a little early, but I know there's a lot of back-to-back sessions. So maybe this will allow you all to take a little bit of a water bathroom break. And if there's any questions, I'll just kind of monitor the chat. I'm sorry again about not being able to hear anyone, but I'm glad that I was able to be with you and that you all were able to be with me this afternoon. I really appreciate your interactivity on the chat and the involvement and the commitment that you made to be a part of this conference. So Lauren, great question. So depending on where you're at, there's lots of LENA programs going on all over the country. And so we have an interactive map on our website. If you go to the interactive map, you can click on the state that you live in, and you can see where LENA is in your community. And then if you don't see it, you can feel free to reach out to me and I can kind of share if anyone's interested in LENA, how to get connected. Thanks, Maria. It's always good to have so much tools. I love tools too. More tools, the better. Okay. I'm gonna circle out. Thank you, Brianna.